Hey guys, Henning and Morten from FlippedNormals here. In this video we are going to be looking at how we can model a very simple Wacom pen. This here is really intended for beginners who really just want to make like their first model, or people who are still pretty new to 3D modeling in Maya. The final result here is pretty simple, but we're still using professional techniques, and this is the way I will still model it for production. So there's going to be some good theory here. There's going to be some good workflow stuff. So yeah, let's just get started with it.
Oh, it's going to be super exciting.
Oh, super exciting.
A Wacom pen.
Whoa. And so the very first thing we're going to do now, we're going to set up an image plane. If you hit the space bar, click in the center and go to the right view of the hotbox. Now we can just go to right view and let's set up an image plane here. Let's just select the camera, click this guy here. And then we go down to environment and image plane and we hit create. Now we have an image plane here for this view. And under image name, we just go in here and we just paste in our path and we have a little Wacom pen here. And let's just make sure it's set to all looking through in all views here. So now we can, if we go to perspective view here, now we can just see it here. And now it's pretty much aligned perfectly in the center here. So normally I want to put this up so it's actually resting on the ground, but for now we're just going to keep it in the center of the grid just so it's a bit easier.
Yeah, this works a little differently than if you create a plane and apply a texture to it. Like using image planes just through the camera view is just a lot more. I think it's a lot handier.
Yeah, it is. You can move it around and do all
I mean, you can do the same thing with the plane. It's just you don't have to apply the texture and make sure it fits. The image plane is just resizes to whatever image you apply it to.
Yeah.
So
it's a pretty nice way of doing it.
Yeah.
This is something you use all the time as well in general. So let's just start moving it a bit off here so we actually have some room to work on here. And let's create a cylinder. The reason I'm making a cylinder here is that you want to have something which is similar to the shape here. Like you could start this with a lot of shapes, but I mean, it's a cylinder. So let's start with that. And then we just set this here to subdivision axis to 16. I just want 16 segments here because then you can just divide this equally into four sections, which becomes a bit important later on.
It's generally when you're modeling, it's just power of two kind of thing when you're doing any sort of modeling like this. Just it's really nice.
It is.
First of all, it looks good, but math-wise, it just makes it easier when you're counting stuff and duplicating things. So
what we would do now we want to make sure this here is rotated the other way. So hold on the J key and it will snap it. So if we just try this, it's going to be a bit fiddly, but now it's just snapped to, it's just gone to 90 degrees. You can also just do it here, but it's just keeps it simple. Yeah,
holding on the J key snaps it in default 15 degree increments.
So. And you can change it under, where is it? It's under here somewhere. Oh yeah, here it is. Step size. You can change this here to 15 degrees.
Yeah.
So,
the step size just gets activated when you hold on the J key, essentially.
So now we go to right, just the right view here. And now we can just scale this guy down. Now this is important that we scale this down on the center one. Otherwise it's going to be squashed. It's going to look like, it might look fine like this, but it's not going to be fine. Make sure you're scaling on the center one.
Be an awesome Wacom pen.
Yes. So let's just do this. And I'm just going to scale it up. So the way I prefer to model is from general to specific. There is a million ways of modeling here, but I just prefer to block everything in first. So I'm just going to block the entire length of this and just take this here. You also don't actually have to hold over the handle. You can just hold shift middle mouse button and just move it. So you see the cursor's all the way over here and you can just move it like this.
Yeah, it's important to note that if you're moving it like that, then it moves it on the axis that you last moved on. If you haven't moved on any axis recently, it'll just do all three axes or whatever axes that are visible.
Yeah. We also want X-ray to be active, and we just do this by going under shading, and then we can just set X-ray here. This is one of these things you probably want to map to a hotkey, but we're just using vanilla Maya here. So there are going to be some things in this video we are going to recommend you to map to a hotkey, but we'll just keep it simple.
Yeah.
We can also just move the image plane down a little bit, just so we can see in the center. And now you can see I didn't actually have to hit the manipulator here. I just shift middle mouse button and just move it in. This makes it a bit easier. So right mouse button and just go to vertex, and then we just scale this down as well. And then we just move it all the way down here. It's going to be a lot easier if you just stick to general to specific here. And up a little here. And now we can disable X-ray. And then we can select all the points here at the end and just extrude it out a little. Several ways you can do this. You can, this is my preferred way, is select a point and then shift right mouse button to faces, or you can just go do this in one go. It looks like magic when you're doing it. It just means you can just select it really quickly.
Yeah.
So now we can just hit shift right mouse button, extrude. You can see we aren't using any menus up here at all. You could really work in like expert mode.
Yeah, using the hotbox or using marking menus is just a lot faster in general. Marking menus are even faster than the hotbox, I would say.
Really is. And so when you extrude, you can use all the gizmos here. I just prefer to just do scale by hand because I'm old school like that. So just go back into right view and just scale this up like so. And then we'll just extrude this one more. Shift. You see this was just so quick now. Shift right mouse button down. You don't even have to wait for a manipulator. And then we just move it out here. Now again, we just scale it down like so. So what we also have to do, we have to separate out certain parts of this. You can see here that certain parts here are different materials. Like this here is one material, this is one, this is one, this is one here, and this is one here. And you want to really separate this out based on how this is in real world. So
that's a question we actually get a lot.
So often.
Like, should I model, like the general train of thought there is if it's separate in real life, then separate it in your model. Obviously for games sometimes it can be different. Yeah. You would have the entire character be one with maybe the clothes or something even sometimes. But as a good modeling practice, if it's separate in real life, then separate it in 3D.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just extrude this in here as well now. So select this one at the end point, click here. And then we just go into shift, control right mouse button to faces. And just scale it down. And let's just look at the pen here. That looks about right. So then I'm actually looking at the real pen in real life for that. So now we just extruded this in here. So now we have some geometry. We also want to, you see here how it's like shiny here? I want to separate that out. So if we go to the right view, and now we can go to X-ray. So we're going to use a different tool here. We're going to be using multi-cut. This is just be in the item mode, and then we go to shift right mouse button, multi-cut. And then we just make a little loop there by holding down the control key and clicking. Really handy stuff. You can just very quickly just add cuts to it. So we've been doing this a couple of different places here. We are going to be doing this here as well. There is, this is a bit hard to see in the reference, but there's actually a cut here as well, which needs to be a separate part. You can see this more easily in the real world if you have a Wacom pen. And then we're going to be adding a little notch here as well. There's a tiny little notch here, and we also need this geometry just so we can scale it up. So double click on our edge here, and then we can just scale this up so it fits a bit better. And then we need to add a loop here as well, just so this here fits a bit better with the silhouette. And you can see just moving using the right mouse button to change this to edges. And then we just scale this down a little bit here. So now we basically have the overall shape of the pen here. But one thing we have to do is whenever you hit the 3 key, 1, 2, and 3 on the keyboard, you see now it smooths here, but it gets way too smooth here. So we're gonna have to add supporting loops to all this. Yeah. We'll add that in a bit. You see everything just shrinks down here.
It's really like supporting loops is one of those things that it's almost like icing on the cake. You know, or if you're painting, it's like the white highlight. Yeah. There's no reason to commit to these too early.
No.
If you're using something like creasing, then obviously that doesn't matter anymore. But
you can also see here that we get a history here. This is probably the #1 beginner mistake in Maya, that people don't delete their history. This gets long as hell after a while. So you want to go under, where is this? Edit, and then we have delete by type, or delete all by type. This will delete for the entire scene. And you can just hit history, or you can just delete here. And you see the hotkey here is Shift Alt D. and now you just see it disappears.
It's just a really good practice to just, it's a good habit to learn, to just have that hotkey in your mind and just delete history once in a while.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are some things that you might want to keep history on for.
Yeah.
Like if you're chamfering something at the very end of your modeling, and then if you keep history, you can keep going back and tweaking the chamfering.
Yeah.
But as general note, you want to delete history.
You also want to be really careful with this feature here. Delete all by type and history.
Yeah.
Because if you have anything skinned in your model, it's going to delete everything. Any rig is just going to be destroyed from this.
Yeah.
So I generally just select the object and then Shift-Alt-D and go boom. And that's it. So what I'm going to do before adding supporting loops to this is I'm just going to split this into a couple different parts. So go into poly mode, into faces, and just select them here. Straight up, just drag and drop. I'll just drag here. And then we go to Shift, right mouse button, and then we hit extract faces. And do the same for this as well. You can see this is now part of all this. So we do the same thing here, select these guys, and make sure everything is selected. And then we hit extract faces again. And same with this as well, because we want these here to also be separate. And extract faces. So now we have a couple different parts here, which we can work with. So this also makes it a lot easier if you're once you're shading your model as well, because now you can just apply one shader which has this roughness value, one which has this, and one which has this. Essentially, you're just like from super sharp to mid and to very blurry.
Yeah,
just makes it a lot easier. And then I also want to create this little thing at the end here. So this here is actually movable. So you can't just keep it up. So the same object is here. You actually have to separate it out. So same as before, we are just going to go to select the middle one, two faces, and then Shift right mouse button, extrude, and then we're just going to scale this down like so. And then we can use another feature called duplicate faces. Shift right mouse button, and then we do, where are you? Duplicate faces. There we are. So now we can select this guy here, and we can just move it out, and we can just extrude it. But you can see now that the pivot is in the center. So you want to go to modify and to center pivot. This is also one of these you probably want to add to a hotkey. And speaking of hotkeys, Control 1 is the default for isolate. We actually made a video about this, and then everyone in the comments were like, "It's Control 1."
Yeah, so that's because it's I guess like before Control 1 existed as a hotkey, we had a script for isolating things.
Yeah, exactly. So super handy. So same thing as before. We just selected the part and extrude it out. And again, delete history, Shift-Alt-D, and now we can just move this guy out here. And how accurate you want to be here just depends on what you want to do. If you, let's say you're working in VFX, which is our background, then you want this here to be pixel perfect. If you're just doing this kind of for like a personal project and you just want to be quick, you can kind of do it by eye. I recommend just doing it properly, but you don't have to align it perfectly. I'm just going to delete this part here as well, because there was no reason to just have this. So just select it and hit the delete key.
Gotta save those 16 faces.
Very important 16 faces. So now we are going to extrude this out here. And so let's just select these, go to the right view, hit extrude, and now we're just going to scale it down on the center axis and just move it out like so, and scale it down a little bit. And again, extrude once more. If you're confused about how we're extruding, you can just go back into the video, because it's really just the same tools we're using over and over again.
Yeah.
So now you can see we have a bunch of triangles here. And you might have heard that triangles are bad. For this, it might actually pinch a little.
Yeah.
So what you can do here, you can select all the edges here. You can hold on the tab key and just go click. You just drag on top. And now we can just delete the edges. And now we can use the multicut tool to connect them up again. Shift right mouse button and multicut, and you can just start to connect these guys up. You hit the right key, or just right click to commit to this, which is quite handy.
Another handy way of doing this as well is that you can actually take just every other edge for every 2 other edge. Just delete that because you're doing it as the power of 2, and that would actually create a similar looking result.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the handy thing about working with power of 2 edges,
Yeah.
or whatever you want to call it.
Which is just super nice.
Yeah.
It's just really nice to cap this.
The sort of advantage of capping it with quads like this is that once you start to subdivide, you don't end up with that pinched triangle look that you can easily end up with otherwise.
Absolutely. We can also convert to verts, and then we can use average verts, which for some reason doesn't seem to work now. There we go. Okay, so that's again just selected and average vert. This is just gonna like merge them, just average them together. It's gonna soften it off.
And really good hotkey Henning was just using there was G. So G just repeats the last action of the tool. So if you go to average vertices, then you don't have...
do this, and we're averaging now.
Then you can just hit G and it keeps averaging it, which is really, really nice.
Really handy. Yeah, it's hard to do these basic modeling videos when you just been doing it for so long. So it's nice to have a second pair of eyes on this.
Yeah, it's always helpful.
Yeah, it is. So now we just want to move this out a little bit as well. Just so we get a little bit of a bulge here. And then we just want to add a loop here in the center. And you can see now if I hold down the Control and Shift key, it's going to snap. So now we can just snap it here in the middle-ish, like so. And then we can scale it up. You can see whenever you're doing any kind of modeling, this is very low level. It's not necessarily like super fancy tools or anything crazy. You're just kind of using extrude.
Yeah.
And that's mostly it. Let's just scale this up a little bit more. And delete history. Delete history for this as well. You really don't need history for these kind of things. It just becomes crazy.
Yeah. Because the number one thing that will mess up your scene is rogue history on some objects.
Yeah.
That just makes mine crash.
It really is. So let's isolate this guy as well now. And let's just extrude this in a little bit here. Select, just double click the edge. And again, isolate is just Control 1. So let's just do this. And then extrude. And now you can just scale down, or you can just drag on this axis here, the blue one. And you can see that's just a local offset, which is quite handy. And the reason is, once we start smoothing this, you can see that now you want to add some supporting edges to this. This is something we talked about that we actually had a hard time in the beginning with understanding supporting edges. Yeah. So
it wasn't really something that was talked about. Like even in tutorials, the tutorials that I followed back in the day was just like, yeah, just make these edges. Okay.
Cool. Yeah, so the way we can just sharpen this up here is add supporting edges to it, which you can do with multicut and just click and click. But I find a slightly better, more elegant version of it, because now you can see the spacing here is mostly fine, but if you want to be like perfect, you can select one edge here and you can do connect. And it's just going to connect the entire loop here. Now if you hold down, by default, it's set to segment, so you can hold down middle key, and now you get 2 segments. And now if you hold down Control, Shift, right mouse button, you can set it to pinch. And now if you again hit middle mouse button, it's just going to pinch it here. Hit the Q key to commit to this. And now again we can hit the G key just to do this. And now we can just do the same thing here. Just set the pinch amount. If this is too complicated, just add the loops by hand, which is perfectly fine as well.
Yeah, multicut tool is... I prefer the multicut tool personally.
Yeah, like that's what we're talking about, right? Like there's a million ways to model anything.
Yeah.
So like I'll also just do certain things here. Like this is multicut because I need... it's just a bit faster sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's just whatever you prefer. So now you can see now it's nice and sharp and smooth.
Nice and hard.
Nice and hard. So we'll do the same with this as well. We just select the edge here and the edge here. Then just isolate it, Control 1, extrude. And we can just extrude it in like so. Actually, we can do one, instead of adding the supporting loop, we can just add the supporting loop now. And then we can just extrude it down like so.
Efficiency.
Oh, so efficient. And now we can do the same thing here. Connect tool. And we can just set this here to pinch. And we can just pinch it all the way over. Like so. And segments are now set to 3. So now we get 1 in the middle as well. So now this one here is nice. One of the key things as well, which I see beginners do, they make stuff too sharp. Like this here might actually be a bit too sharp. So if you see that, you can just double click it here and you can just scale it in. Kind of hacky, but
that's what 3D is, man.
That's what 3D is. Now you can see it's just a bit rounder here.
Yeah.
Because most things really aren't razor sharp. And do the same thing with this. Just scale this in. You should have a good idea of how to do these kind of things by now if you've done it a few times.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically, we're doing the same thing over and over again in this tutorial, so.
Yeah, that's why I think it's a good subject matter, because it's such a simple one to really do. Add one here and add one here, so we just get a nice little smooth fall off here.
Yeah.
And the same thing here.
Oh, here's another thing. You should probably avoid modeling in the sub. When you hit the 3 key to preview smooth, avoid modeling in that because it's weird. Yeah. Like you might think your mesh looks fine because you've stretched it to the extreme, but then once you unsmooth it, then you realize, oh crap, I don't have supporting edges that are good enough.
Yeah, absolutely. So work in this mode, not this mode. You can see how different the model is. Now if you're modeling like this, you're like, where is it? It's like kind of like that and everything changes.
Yeah.
But if you work like this, then
full control.
You have full control of it. So now I'm just, honestly, you don't need this perfect symmetry I showed you before. It's just a nice tool to have with the connect tool.
The connect tool is super powerful.
So now you can just add it by multicut. Yeah, stuff I usually map to hotkeys is multicut, connect, center pivot. Yeah. So far of the ones we used.
X-ray.
X-ray as well. X-ray is super handy.
Isolate selected, which is not control 1 because control 1 is a terrible hotkey.
Yeah, it's so hard to.
Like it's really uncomfortable.
You don't see here the reference as well. There's a tiny little notch here. So let's just add this here. Select this. And then we just scale it down a little bit here. And there's also like an actual hole for the nib here. So we can do the same thing here. Select the center one. So control right mouse button to faces. We're just going to extrude it in. Same thing as before. And extrude it in. Just move it in here. So the other one was actually going to be visible. So that one I would actually quad up. This one I'm not going to bother.
Yeah.
Because it's inside something. Who cares?
Exactly.
So we can use the connect thing here. Connect tool.
But Henning, what about the triangle?
Yeah, oh my god.
We've got like 16 of them.
Yeah, so we have a different video on triangles.
Oh yeah.
Which essentially triangles are perfectly fine. Everything is a triangle under the surface. So as long as you know how to use triangles, you're fine. Just gonna add a little bit of like extra geometry here as well to these. To sharpen up a little bit.
Especially when you're doing hard surface things like this. Yeah. I mean, triangles rarely... You can put in a lot of triangles in this and you wouldn't even be able to tell.
Yeah. Isolate as well. You don't have to isolate. I just prefer to work in smaller chunks.
Makes it easier to see what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. Scale it in. And now we can just add a loop here and add a loop here. And we are almost there. So now we have to make a... It's not exactly the same, but we're not going to waste your time with that. So now we're just going to make the nib as well. Control right mouse button to faces. Just extrude it in a little bit. And now we're just going to control right mouse button and duplicate face. And we have a little guy here. If you're having trouble actually selecting it, you can just select both like this and control drag, and now you get this selected. Make sure nothing else is selected here. And then we go to modify, center pivot. You're going to see why it's useful to put this on a hotkey.
Yeah.
You can just move it out a little bit.
You do it all the time when you're creating new objects from other objects. Yeah. So just select the entire thing again and just extrude. And you see now it becomes black, and that's because the normals are flipped. Oh! We still haven't done that tutorial.
Oh, now we should. Yeah.
I think we've been talking about it for like 4 years.
Yeah, but we're like, hi, this is from Henning Morten for FlippedNormals. In this FlippedNormals video, we're going to be talking about how to flip normals.
That'd be terrible.
That would be so bad. If your normals are flipped or reversed, you can just go under display
reverse.
and reverse.
The mesh display, they're calling it now.
Yes.
They're totally ruining our branding here.
Yeah,
That's
they are.
terrible.
Like the G key, super handy. Reverse, and now you have G again. You just see you adding more things here. Super handy. So you really would want your normals not to be reversed, because
Or flipped.
or flipped.
The colloquial term is FlippedNormals.
And we just extrude her out here. You don't have to duplicate faces. You can just make another cylinder and just tuck it in there. I just think it's easier. I'm just reusing as much as I possibly can. Extrude down, scale it down, and then like so.
So if you were to sum up this tutorial, it would be extrude and
Extrude and scale.
it should scale. Yeah, that would probably be it.
That's pretty much it. To be fair, that sums up a lot of modeling as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Extrude, scale, add supporting edges to it.
Yeah, that's it.
So, I mean, this is pretty much it. We have one more thing which is a bit annoying. We have this little thing here.
Oh, that's the thing we've all been waiting for.
Oh, the little button. How are you going to solve that? Well, we could have easily solved it by not showing you. But we are
But
going to
now
show
you mentioned it.
Now I mentioned it. So, the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to go to multicut, shift right mouse button, multicut, and just hit the control key when this is up here. So now we get an approximation of where the hole is. And depending on how many cylinders or segments your initial cylinder had, your hole might be too big or too small here.
This is something you kind of want to plan for.
Yeah.
And yeah, that comes with the whole hard surface modeling.
Yeah.
Cutting holes into things that are round is just one of those things that will suck. And it will suck
just tricky.
forever. Yeah.
Even like this model here is going to be all right now, but it's not going to be perfect because you just require a lot of fiddling with this.
Yeah.
Which is above the scope for this. So you're never going to guess the next step. Maybe it's extrude and move down. Who would have known? So we are also just going to... Now you can see what happens here, though, if you just subdivide it.
Done?
Yeah, not done.
Oh, okay.
Who knew? So you can see now, let's just add some supporting loops. Multicut tool, add a loop here, add a loop here. And now we're going to see what happens. Still doesn't look super good. So we can add, let's see if this works. We can select these, and select these, and then we can just scale them down a little bit.
Like along the length of the pen.
Yeah.
Right, because it's easy to add supporting loops around a cylinder, but along the length of the cylinder, that becomes tricky. Yes, exactly.
This is hard. Let's say you want to scale this down, the entire hole. You have to scale in like this. Now you've broken the curve of it.
Yeah, exactly. And once you start adding supporting loops that run along the length of it, then you've broken that cylinder shape.
Yes, and it's going to look nasty.
So that's the tricky part.
So the way we fix this here is we just add more loops. Add supporting loops, like so. And so. So now we have a nice little hole here. But you can see we get some pinching here. And this is just one of the things you're just going to get. It's just a tricky issue.
Yeah, the way you would solve that here would be run something like along it, like down there, and then you would try to conform it to like that new shape.
Yeah.
Either that or you start making a cylinder that has like more size to it.
Yeah.
And then that problem would already be solved there.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a bit of a shitty issue.
Yeah.
Like this is one of these where it is honestly just a bit more advanced. You can't see it too much here, but if we assign a shader, we can do this to everything here. Let's just assign a blend shader to it, which is more reflective, or a funk shader. So we can assign a funk shader and just make it a bit darker so it matches.
Do you know what the Fung E shader is?
I have no idea what a funk shader is, but it's there.
Yeah. Anyway, now you can see the issue.
Now you can see the issue here. And one of the ways we always solve this in production is just by having dirt on top. It's just a bit of a shitty issue here. But let's move on for this. So,
it's definitely something we can do a tutorial on in the
for
future.
Sure. So now we can add a loop here as well for it. Because now we just get this nicer hole here. So again, for the buttons here, we are just going to be using the base geometry here for it. So select these two here. And then we just do duplicate face. And select it all, and then just deselect it. And make sure this is the only thing selected. And then we go to modify, center pivot. That's like the 4th time I used it in the tutorial. So hotkey it.
I actually have a hotkey for both centering pivot and putting the pivot back to the center of the world. Sometimes I want that.
That's useful.
Yeah.
So now you can see this is bent here. Or like has a bit of a curve. Select this and delete. Ta-da!
That was pretty easy.
That was pretty easy. And now we just need to build this button here. So we can select this poly and just extrude it up. This is where we do want to just go into our view here, right view, and just go here and select X-ray so we can see a bit better. So we want a loop here so that we can move this part up. So we've moved this up here like so. I move this down here a little like so. Then move these back here. You can see that there's nothing fancy here. It's just straight up, just move and extrude some points.
Yep.
Disable X-ray. Really want X-ray on a hotkey. And let's just look at this here, the button in real life. It's so much better to look at stuff in real life than it is to look at it on a picture like this. Particularly this like 500 by 600 pixel image. It's terrible.
Yeah, and it's like a marketing picture, and it's tilted right. Like it's
It's not great. So let's scale down a little so it fits in here. And then we see we had a tiny little notch here, tiny little like bulge. I'm just gonna be a bit cheeky and just add this and add one in the center to it.
That was indeed very cheeky.
And then just move it down like this. This is the cheeky part. Because instead of actually working with this like inserting a cylinder and connecting it up, we're just adding more loops to it and just moving these down here. Moving this like so.
Just inventing the curve of a cylinder.
Yes, exactly. And you can see again the problem here. You need to add supporting loops to it. So let's just do that. Add a loop here. Add a loop here. You really don't want this here to be too tight. So we can add a loop here and add a loop there and add a loop here. Where you need to add loops becomes more intuitive as you've been doing this. And it just requires a bit of practice. So we just need one more loop here and one more loop there, and we are mostly good. So you can almost just refine the shape here. Like this here is no way like perfect in terms of it, but it's pretty close representation of it. Let's see if we missed anything here. Let's just take away the grid here. So I mean, now we have a Wacom pen in around, what is this, half an hour, which is fairly clean, fairly easy to use. So we really hope this here has been useful. Yeah. If you want to see any specific shapes for us to model, anything you have questions about, feel free to just ask in the comments. Yeah. And if you want to see more videos like this in the future, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.
Thanks.